And we're back with another episode of Thursday Night Ask the Expert, where we bring on a guest who knows their stuff and can tell us all about Georgia State's upcoming opponent. So my guest this week is Catie Harper, who's the JMU football beat writer for the Daily News Record in Harrisonburg. Perfect person to ask about the Dukes heading into Saturday's matchup. Catie, thanks for coming on with us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So I guess this is where I start with everyone I have on this series, just your time on the beat, and I guess specifically the direction you've seen them take under second-year head coach Bob Chesney.
Yeah, so I've been at least around the JMU football program since 2016 when I first started as a student and covering them since my sophomore year. So I've seen them through the Mike Houston, Curt Cignetti era and now into the Bob Chesney. I would say this year it's probably seeming that it's a little bit more of Bob Chesney style. It's the second year, so he's getting a little bit more of his guys in the program, how he wants them to act, kind of what he wants them doing out in the community, and then translating it onto the football field and what he wants his product to look like on game days. So it's been a fun one. I think people look at this team, they see a really, really, really good defense, and I think the offense right now is starting to catch up to it.
Yeah, let's go in on that offense, and a situation Georgia State fans will be familiar with. There was a 2 QB conversation at the beginning of the year. You had Alonza Barnett and then Matthew Sluka, who had played with Chesney at Holy Cross. And it seemed like that was going to keep going on, and then out of the bye week, it seems like it's been the Alonza Barnett show. So I guess, was it as sudden as it seemed from the outside with that? Was it your expectation that Barnett was going to suddenly take over? And then I guess just speak to what you've seen from the new solid QB1.
Yeah, I think it's been just kind of a wild offseason watching this quarterback battle. Alonza was extremely limited in what he was able to do over fall camp, and he showed up on the field at the end of spring practice in the last practice that they had, and none of us really expected to see him there with the injury that he had against Marshall. But I would say within the last couple of practices of fall camp, I started being looking at myself and being like, wow, I think Alonza Barnett is about to somehow get back in pretty much 9 months from a serious knee injury. And during that Louisville game on national television Friday night, people are paying attention, and it just didn't seem to click for them offensively. It had worked well using both Matthew Sluka and Alonza Barnett against Weber State, but it's Weber State versus, and it's not even the Weber State that JMU played when they were in the FCS. It was a Weber State program that's been down the last couple of years. So you would hope it would work against them, but going into the Louisville game and it not really clicking at all, Bob Chesney seemed very hesitant to really answer any questions on who was going to come out of the bye week and get that nod, and it was Alonza Barnett, and he hasn't really looked back. We've seen Matthew Sluka a few times now, both in this last week against Georgia Southern, didn't see him at all at Liberty. But I do think Bob Chesney likes what Alonza Barnett can bring, and a lot of that is because he is very reliable through the air. He doesn't put the ball in many bad places where it's going to get intercepted. He had 4 interceptions last year. He had a bad one at Liberty. But for the most part, he puts it in a very good place. And that's the kind of quarterback I think this offense can really use well because they have the run game to support him.
You mentioned maybe the offense coming along, maybe not all the way where Bob Chesney wants it. I guess, what are those areas that maybe they're still looking for improvement versus what are the strengths of the offense I think they're probably going to lean on for the most part heading into Saturday against Georgia State?
I think they're starting to find their strength now with the offensive line playing really well. It was a group that was older, so I think a lot of people thought coming into the season it would start better than it did. But over the last 2 weeks, they haven't given up a sack, and when Alonza Barnett has time, I think that's when he really is at his best because he can connect with some really good wide receivers right now that are experienced. They've been proven at the FCS level before making this jump. And I mean, their bread and butter right now is still running the football. That was on display this weekend, even without George Pettaway and Iowa Dei. Wayne Knight has just grown into an absolute star in the run game, and I think people were able to finally see what Jordan Fuller, who was a star at the FCS level, was able to bring. So that is kind of right now what really sets this offense apart, and I think when the receiving game gets going, it's very impressive. And Alonza Barnett right now is starting to heat up and connect, especially with the tight end, Lakota Dupree.
And you referenced the strength of the defense. I guess you can look at the statistics and kind of it all bears out, but I guess what do you think it is that makes the defense sort of tick and have them playing as well as they are?
I mean, historically at JMU, I think there is a pride on the defensive side of the ball. It's been a group that has been really, really good for the last several of years. And right now, under Colin Hitchler in his first year as the defensive coordinator, what a lot of the players have said is that they really get the chance to play free and they can play fast and kind of go after the ball. And I think there are a lot of guys on this defense that kind of are ball hawks, and they can just find it from across the field. DJ Barksdale is one who, I mean, he had a tackle at Louisville where he was on the opposite side of the field, saw the receiver catch a screen, and he was across the field and tackling him before he even got to the line of scrimmage. Like, it was one of those moments where you're like, okay, wow, he can spot that from yards away. But I think a lot of it all starts with Trent Hendrick, who had a career day over the weekend against Georgia Southern at linebacker. He's kind of what makes this defense tick right now. They take a lot of pride in the run game and stopping the run. They take a lot of pride in getting takeaways, which haven't come as fast of a rate as it did last year, but they still have the ability to do it. And it's one of those that I think they just have a relentless mindset that teams maybe can't hang in with them for all 4 quarters the way that they want to play the game.
And I guess should ask about the third phase as well. I'm a sicko, so I might ask about special teams no matter what, but Georgia State has had some real issues. So I'm wondering going into this game, and I'm sure fans are as well, like what JMU might present from a special teams perspective and where they've been good, where they haven't been, and how that might look on Saturday, because those are the plays that, if it ends up being closer than the experts think, that might be where it shows up in a bigger way.
It's interesting. JMU has had its own struggles on special teams this year, but they've also had very bright spots, and it depends of what angle you're looking at it at. Curtis Harris-Lopez had an 88-yard kick return for a touchdown against Georgia Southern. It was his first return at JMU. Wayne Knight is, again, like he is in the running game. He is really, really good in the return game, and Bob Chesney likes him in that role and says that he has no fear of running full speed at someone who's running full speed at him. So the return game for JMU is very sound. Kickoff coverage is usually very sound because Cristiano Rosa doesn't even put it really in a place where teams can return the ball. Field goals have been great. Morgan Suarez is new to the team. He's missed 1, I think, but he's usually pretty sound. They've had some issues in the punt game with a new punter who they're getting, still kind of into the system completely. He had, I guess it went down as a negative 22-yard team punt against Georgia Southern, which was just kind of one of those freak ones. Snap goes over his head. He tries to get a wet football off, and it went right out of bounds. Louisville, he had an 8-yard punt. So there are some issues in the punt game. I would say for the most part, it's been okay. And at least when the punt gets off well, the coverage is there to back it up.
I will say, I saw that Louisville one. That was like the most unlucky 8-yard punt that took the craziest bounce. Yeah. I don't think you can put that on the punter.
No. And it's kind of, the negative 22-yarder one this past weekend was another one. The weather was mixed in with it. I saw an interview with him yesterday where he said he wasn't going to blame the weather, but a wet football rolling on the ground is not usually going to get off for a good punt.
And I like to throw something open, just kind of totally open-ended for a person who's covering the team, just kind of maybe mention something that just is on their mind, is something that you've learned about this team, something you're waiting to learn, just whatever comes to mind as far as just generally you seeing it day in, day out, what you want, where you want to take the conversation.
Wow, okay. I mean, there are things that I see daily that I want to see more of when it comes to this team. I think the receiving game is one that I kind of touched on earlier, that I still think there is so much kind of untapped potential in that group that just they haven't all come together for one game and one solid performance yet. They had some drops again over the weekend, but I think with guys like Nick DeGennaro and Landon Ellis, who's just kind of seeming like a long touchdown magnet at this point, and Jalen Sanchez, that's a group that I want to see them all kind of click in one game, because we're starting to see it now where, like I had mentioned, Lakota Dupree, their tight end, who last year was playing defensive end at Charlotte, is really just starting to come into as this big yardage receiver. So I think there's so much potential in that group that watching this team as much as I do, I want to see it all kind of click in one game like we've seen with the running backs so far.
And, JMU, no stranger to success on the football field, won some FCS titles. the Sun Belt title has eluded them, and obviously now the CFP is the G5, G6 spot is what everyone's kind of pushing for at this point. How much are those type of goals specifically talked about, and is it like something that they're addressing head on versus the stock like we got to take it one game at a time, all that stuff?
They definitely kind of go in on the one game at a time, and I would say from what I've heard the players say, they talk way more about the Sun Belt Championship than they do making the college football playoffs. They do mention the college football playoffs, but I think when you look at guys like Trent Hendrick and Jacob Thomas, who are the two team captains and they've been at JMU for 4 years, not having a Sun Belt title right now kind of feels personal to them because they went through the transition of not even being eligible to win it, while it was arguably the best team was JMU. So I think right now that's the one that I think, if I had to guess, they're probably wanting the most. And to even have it where they could potentially play for it in Harrisonburg for the first time, I think that's one that would be very special, because even when you look at the college football playoff, it can still be a long way out for any G5 team just because of it's only one spot.
Well, Catie, that was great stuff. Thanks for taking us through all angles of the James Madison Dukes ahead of Saturday's game in Atlanta.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.